We'll continue our discussion of the key building blocks of an Android app. We're going to talk about the life cycle of an activity, and we'll do that by getting right into the code. If you recall, we got into the code in our earlier video on the application class and its lifecycle. We learned about application lifecycle methods such as onCreate and onTerminate. Keeping that in mind, let's have a look at the skeleton of an activity. Open Android Studio. We have already taken the first step and created our app here. Open home activity via app, Java, package name, in which our case is com.eduonix.training.weatherapp, home activity. Before going into the detail of each lifecycle callback method, let's understand why the lifecycle of an activity is important and why we need it. Unlike other programming paradigms in which apps are launched with a main method, the Android system initiates code in an activity instance by invoking specific callback methods that correspond to specific stages of its lifecycle. The graphical flowchart is a simplified illustration of the lifecycle callbacks shown as a step pyramid. You can see that we start on the bottom left with created, step up to started, and resumed at the top. From there, we step down to paused, and finally to stopped. This corresponds to what we discussed in our previous section, where we talked about the sequence of callback methods that start up an activity and those that tear down an activity. Now, let's have a more in-depth look at each of these steps. From our illustration, you can see that the onCreate method comes first. When a user selects your app icon from the screen on their phone, the system calls the onCreate method for the activity in your app that you declared to be the launcher, or the main activity. This is the activity that serves as the main entry point to your app's user interface. Right now, the main activity on our weather app doesn't have any lifecycle callbacks, so let's override the onCreate method. Let's write a single line of code to log the invocation of the onCreate method. It can be tracked in the log window while we run the application here. It's a log.i method which accepts the string parameters, in which the first one is the tag. Let's give weather app as the tag. Then comes our string to denote where we are. Once the onCreate method finishes executing, the system calls both the onStart and the onResume methods in quick succession. Let's have a look at the onStart method first. Technically speaking, this activity becomes visible to the user when onStart is called. Now let's override the onStart method. Similarly, let's insert a logger to track onStart method invocation. As in the previous example, you would type log.i weather app inside onResume. Next is onResume. When the user resumes your activity from a pause state, the system calls the onResume method. The Android system calls this method every time your activity comes into the foreground, including when it's created for the very first time. Insert a logger here as well. The next important lifecycle method is onPause. When the system calls onPause for your activity, it means your activity is still partially visible, but most often it is an indication that the user is leaving the activity and will soon enter the stop state. Don't forget to put the log here. Log.i weather app inside pause. While the activity's first lifecycle callback is onCreate, its very last callback is onDestroy. The system calls this method on your activity as a final signal that your activity instance is being completely removed from the system memory. Let's override the onDestroy method by adding a log. Now we have everything set up and ready to test the activity lifecycle. Our home activity looks like this. You can see that we have each of the steps in our setup and teardown of this activity. We have onCreate, onStart, onResume, onPause, and onDestroy. Now let's run the app in the emulator. This gives us the ability to see what we've created so far as though we were using the app. You can see Logger shows the onCreate, onStart, and onResume methods in the respective order when we launch the application. Now, press the back button. You can see that the onPause and onDestroy are invoked when we exit the app. These corresponding logs are displayed in the window as you can see here. From the order in which each log is shown, it's evident how the activity lifecycle works. We will be using it in other scenarios in our real-world app development. So that concludes our discussion of the activity lifecycle. Here's a brief summary of this session. We talked about the fact that methods are used to set up and then tear down an activity. These are onCreate, onStart, onResume, onPause, and onDestroy. We created a log to track the activity of each method, and then we ran the app in our emulator so that we could see the app running live. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the next section.